In another special episode, today I'm talking with Richard Robinson, the guy I refer to as the human version of LinkedIn. Everyone knows him and he knows everyone, especially in marketing and advertising. I guess with 14 years running oyster catchers to now leading Ingenuity Plus, he's very kindly introduced me, unfortunately, to people who are currently in the Badlands or in between us, as he calls them, and we'll go on to tell us about in this episode. But today we're going to discuss his views on the market, his predictions based on his conversations with very senior folk on 2025, and no doubt he'll have some advice for job hunting, kind of the way to go about it in today's tricky climate. So I can't thank him enough for coming on to this, but please welcome Richard Robinson. Richard,
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
Very good, thanks. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited, mainly because, in fact, I remember way back when we first had our very first conversation when you had just stepped into the world of the Badlands, or as you rightly say, as I call it, the in-betweeners. And I think you said, I've got this idea. What do you think? And I said, yeah, go for it. And here we are today. And I've been following along, listening to a number of the podcasts, and it's fantastic to see how this sort of small idea that you thought you were going to put into the market to make everyone's lives a little bit better has really taken shape and taken off. Well done.
Right, look, I can't thank you enough for that. Yeah, we spoke. Must have been back in February or March this year. That's how long I've been doing this now. But yeah, I think you simply said just go for it, because that's largely the way to figure out if something's going to work. Right? You can't just sit around and ponder it. You have to roll your sleeves up and have a go. So yeah, I just tried it. Much as I'd tried to advise clients over the last 25 years, just try it. We'll put stuff out. We'll see what sticks.
Totally.
Doing that myself has been a huge learning curve. But yeah, we spoke earlier this year, but I'd met you. You would have been in your oyster catchers days. I was at TBWA London.
Yeah.
You'd come in to meet Sarah Tate and the new C-suite, Andy Jacks and Anna Voigt, who'd just taken over TBWA at the time, and they were obviously reintroducing themselves and TBWA at the time to all the various folk around town. And yes, Richard Robinson's coming in from oyster catchers. It was a big deal at the time. So I remember, I came to that meeting. I met you that time because I was brand new as they were at the time. So it was a fascinating time to be in that. But yeah, you were at oyster catchers at the time, and now you're at Ingenuity Plus with a few bits and bats in between.
Absolutely.
So I think first thing I usually do with the people I talk to who are out of work is give them the opportunity to tell people who they are and what they've been doing. The chances are most people listening to this will know you, but for the 3% of my audience who don't, there's people in Thailand and stuff listen to this, Richard, so I'm not sure how far your reach is. But it'd be good to give people a sense of who you are and what you've been doing, and then we can have a meander through some of the things that we touched on in the intro.
Jared, thanks. That's very kind. Don't worry. I know that there's significantly more people that don't know me than know me, but
you'd be surprised.
But I'd go. The nice thing is, the occupational hazard of my job is that I do get to meet lots of people, and I've said many times that there's only two things in the world actually I'm any good at. I know that people would expect me to say something strategic, but I know I'm very good at connecting people, and I know I'm very good at making things happen. And those are my two things. It's taken me quite a long, stretch of my career to work that out. There's obviously happy things that come as a consequence of that with regards to bringing brands and agencies, or agencies and brands together, bringing talented folk into the same space where they can make amazing things happen. But where did it all come from, and how did I get to do this role? I suppose what you're alluding to. And I'm fortunate, I've been brand side. I was the head of marketing for McDonald's in the UK for a number of years. I worked for the Coca-Cola company in international marketing for a number of years. In classically Coca-Cola terms, my geographical territory was the rest of the world, which meant everywhere outside of North America. So I was on a plane every week somewhere.
Wow.
And so that was my brand side life. Agency side, I've also spent a long time there, worked for Publicis Worldwide, 6-7 years, running their Procter & Gamble business for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And again, planes every week, flying around the world. Didn't actually get to spend any time in Thailand. I know you mentioned them. I did have a stopover in Bangkok, though, for 6-7 hours.
That's the people you're introducing himself to, basically.
There you go. Bangkok Airport, beautiful. I just remember it because it was one of those, the stopover wasn't quite long enough to fall asleep. So therefore I was having to stay awake Otherwise, I was worried about missing this weird connecting flight. But that was a wonderful time at Publicis, because Procter & Gamble is a brand, a company that I loved working with, because they're so strategically sharp. Strategic leadership and creative excellence sort of are the cornerstones of how they run a lot of their marketing. But it meant that I did then get to work right the way through the Arabian Peninsula, the full continent of Africa, spent a lot of time in West Africa and East Africa, North
Wow.
Africa, and then every European market you can think of. And I think I got to the stage where I loved being a client-side marketer. I loved being an agency suit, but I sort of felt that the thing that perpetually surprised me was the rub in between the two. So why was it that the relationships, the mechanics of how brands and agencies come together, stay together, and grow together wasn't more sort of efficient and, I don't know, maybe slightly more effective than it was? It always seemed to be that it was unnecessarily scratchy. And so consequently, as you rightly say, I was very fortunate to go into business with Suki Thompson and Peter Cowie in Oyster Catchers, and Angus Crowther was joining about the same time. And then we sort of built something and grew something over time that I felt made a real difference in the market, until we were bought by a PLC. And then we were married up with brands like Marketing Week and Festival of Marketing and eConsultancy. And then we did that for a while. All of us have now left. And now I'm delighted to be at Ingenuity Plus, which is part of the Ingenuity Group, as their executive director. But I think throughout it's been, if you think about the purpose of this podcast, I've had to move jobs within all of that, from agency side, where I first started out, into McDonald's, and then into Coke, and then going into McDonald's, and then going into Publicis. And so I have had these large periods where I've been thinking about, can you make a jump from sort of one side of the fence to the other, and then eventually living in the middle, and what do you learn as a consequence of those changes as you go through. So I think it's, as you and I have discussed in the past, it's given me quite an interesting perspective of the market and what it takes to have a long career in the industry, which at the end of the day is just built up of people. It's just one of those industries that is fantastic, because human beings are still very much at the epicenter, and then we all have tools, for example, like AI and large language models, that we can put to good effect to help with our strategies and creative ideas and digital mastery as we go forward.
Yeah, for sure. And so, look, thank you for that. For the people in Thailand who now know you, because everyone else does. I think what's fascinating is you clearly have this both sides of the aisle, as I refer to it. I was curious, and I never asked you this in person, but why do you think there is why do you think there is a slightly fractious relationship between the marketing teams and the agency teams, when ultimately everyone's just trying to do the same thing, put stuff out into the world that helps grow a business or sell a service, or
it's an often asked question, that it is fractious, and I think that, I don't know, I'm going to look at this, into my day job, I look at this every day, is that so here's an interesting fact. We've about 6 weeks ago released a very large study on the relationships between brands and agencies, and therefore what role an intermediary might be able to play in the middle. And one of the questions that was asked was we asked 502 marketing directors and above, nationally representative in the UK, so all disciplines, all areas, but they had to have been advertising on TV in the last 24 months. So they had to be of a certain level of strategic mastery. And we asked them about, their relationships with their existing agencies, and operational discipline came out as the number one frustration that brand marketers have with their existing agency partnerships. Really? When I say the number one, it was the number one on sort of 7 of the 10 measures that they could be going for, and it was huge. Operational discipline being, is it right first time? Is it on time? Is it in budget? Is it all the sort of the scratchiness? And I've always believed that no brand ever hires an agency because of the quality of their account handling, and I do feel I can say that, having been an agency account handler for many years. But you when you go to an agency, you want outstanding creative ideas fueled by world-class insight. It doesn't matter if you're the smallest brand or the biggest brand; these are the things that you want. And the account handlers at the beginning of the process are quite invisible because, you're there to make the pitch work, as magnificently as possible. But over time, the ability for an agency to operate as a business partner, and when I say business partner, I mean you've got to think about things like time and money, or time and touches, as I sometimes call it. And I think just over time, it gets scratchy because the reason why you're together, which is, I need an incredible solution to my strategic problem that is through the power of commercial creativity in its broadest form. So I'm including media in that. I'm including AI in that. It's just commercial creativity in its broadest form. There's got to be some people driving the bus. And, and I think what happens is on the brand side, they forget that. And so you have people who aren't necessarily the most experienced managing an agency who are on the front line. And on the agency side, again, you have account handlers who are working to the best of their ability, really the best of their ability, but they're not necessarily set up sometimes with the tools to be able to run this large, complex business that they're being asked to put together. So it ends up being fractious.
Yeah, and just to add to that, each of those engagements tends to have a lot of, not risk, but there's importance. You're not doing it for fun. It's not art school, like you say. There are
Correct.
real world consequences to the success of a campaign delivering against, introducing a new product, new service that, might have shareholders behind it, might have stock behind it, might have, board pinning their hopes on it. And, so there's a lot of jeopardy attached to this thing. And as much as, trying to give creative freedom, I think your driving the bus analogy is good. It's like, I've often described myself a little bit as the kind of conductor of the orchestra. So I'm not the guy who's coming up with the stuff necessarily, but if I'm not there, the drummer will just be over there just playing drums on his own, right? It's like you need to bring everyone along on that journey with clients. And equally, the client needs to understand that the drummer likes to drum his drums loud, and you come to us because he's loud at drumming. There's a little bit of asking for an agency to get involved and then wanting them to fundamentally not be who they are as an agency. I've equally seen that as well from
I agree.
clients. And so it's, but I think what this period in the Badlands for me and has really shown is just how interconnected the two worlds are. Because unfortunately, I've spoken to just so many out of work, very senior marketeers, right up to CMOs, who are just, for the first time largely in their careers, really struggling to find that next thing. And, people who listen to those episodes will be hearing a lot of familiar stories around, the role is now, the idea of a marketing director is now marketing director plus, plus this, plus that, plus this. And so it's super challenging for the marketing world as it is equally for the advertising world. And I think when you and I first spoke kind of offline and you were telling me about the in-betweeners and that kind of piece that you've threaded throughout your career, I just thought it'd be super useful for people to hear about that, because as much as I joke, everybody, there's probably people who don't hear and don't understand what you've been doing within the in-betweeners. It'd be good to give a sense of what that is and how have you seen that changed in the last 24 months, because I think you told me it escalated quite a bit. And
it has, and it's now declined as well. Well, so the idea of the in-betweeners was, with all deferential respect to the people who actually own the trademark. So I've got this, I've never understood ever why when people are in between jobs, they get dropped by journalists, by conferences, by awards judges, by, when you're in a job and you've got a title, you get invited to everything and it's great. And everyone wants to hear your views because your views suddenly carry weight. And then suddenly you're in between jobs and then the cocktail invitations, Jared, suddenly start drying up and people kind of go, oh, I don't want you to be on that panel anymore. And, I don't know about you being that awards judge. And this has been nonsensical to me throughout, because I've gone, greatness doesn't stop just because you're between jobs. You don't stop being a brilliant marketer or a brilliant agency person just because normally for reasons beyond your control, you happen to be in between jobs. Because I've always sat there and gone, I know how the story is going to end. This amazing marketing director is going to get another job. I mean, the end of the story is pretty straightforward. This amazing agency creative director or, chief exec is going to get another job. And we know that's going to happen because we know they're great people and we know that they've had greatness before. So why do you drop people when they're in between jobs? So conversely, because, kind of said, I always think about connecting people and making things happen. And I was going, so surely that's the time you overinvest in people. It's not when you
Yeah, for
underinvest
sure.
in them. That's the time when you show them some human kindness that says you are still a great person. You do still have, outstanding views. You can help me with some of the challenges and problems and issues that I've got. I respect the fact, that your goal is to be a full-time chief marketing officer again, or a full-time agency chief exec. That's the thing you want to do. You don't want to be mucking around as a consultant because that's not for you. But the in-betweeners was just this thing about saying, rather than people having to face into this singularly, individually, on your own, why don't we actually start using some of these people? And I mean, using in a collaborative sense for greater good. That is, you can, when, I get lots of phone calls from people going, oh God, Rich, can you just help me find 10 people? I've forgotten to invite people to be judges on my awards panel. I need somebody to quote for this article and I've got half an hour to go. Can you do you think? And I do sometimes feel I'm a bit sort of rent-a-mob, but I mean that with the greatest respect, going, yes, I can give you all of these people, but you need to chat, you need to face it, the person asking the question, need to ask yourself a fundamental question. This person I'm going to suggest to you currently is in between work. Therefore, is that going to be a problem for you? Or will you accept the fact that when they turn up, they're going to be amazing? And I think because it's become the sort of a paradigm that people go, well, they've got to have a job description. They've got to have a job title after their name. People instinctively say no, but when you challenge them on that, they will then normally say yes. And if they, aren't interested, then I kind of mentally make a note of that, thinking, well, it's a note. Do they really want the best? Do they really want excellence? Because excellence does not stop, Jared, just because somebody is not in a role. And some of the in-betweeners who I'm spending time with, it's like they are head and shoulders above some of the people I then get to meet who are actually
Right.
in role. So the theory was, okay, so what can we do? So in my case, it was just opening up the office and saying, if you're an in-betweener and you need to pit stop, by the way, there's a crucial difference between pit stopping and hot desking. You need to pit stop in the office, just come, give me a call. As long as you're, effectively a marketing director and above, just come in. Because God, I'd love to spend time with them. I'd love to know more about the way that their businesses, their career has worked. Because I know the insight they've got will massively help me moving forwards. But if people want to get on awards panels, if people want to get on panels, if people want to be involved in the industry, it's an easy task just to link all of these aspects together. Why do I do that? Because I'm absolutely convinced that good things, good things that go around always come around. And most of the people I've known for years, and when it comes to it, there will be a time in my career, as there has been, where I'm in between roles, and I kind of remember the people who said, "Rich, just come and do this, or can you help me with that, or what do you think about this?" They're the people I remember because they didn't shun me because I was between jobs, but they didn't look at me like I was a loser. Because in my head, I was thinking, I know I'm not a loser, so why do you think I'm a loser? And so I just I think for me, it's the capacity to recognize people who are in between roles for being as good as they know that they are. And
Well,
sometimes I find, sorry.
no,
Yeah,
I was going to say, I think it goes to the notion that you are not your job title, right? Your job title
correct.
is just a means of identifying you within the pay structure of an organization, essentially. And with that, equally, some of the people I've spoken to, there's human stories behind each of their redundancy or out of work, or some people have, made a decision to become out of work thinking they'd just be straight back in, as been the case in the last 20 odd years, find themselves in a long-term wilderness. But all of those people are still smart, still super clued in, still, I'd actually go so far as to say, slightly more aware of what's going on in the world in marketing at the moment or advertising, simply because they haven't got the head down at their desk doing their day job every day. Do you know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
little bit more. You have so much more time on your hands that kind of broader awareness starts to kick in, and you're kind of learning new things and meeting new people all the time. So you slightly become slightly more interesting. Do you know what I mean? It's like a weird
Yeah,
growth period.
Totally. There's a line I use a lot with people, which is like, the most important brand you'll ever manage is yourself. And I think that when you get some time in between roles, if you think about yourself as a brand and you recognize the fact that the one constant you have throughout your career is yourself, it is the only brand you're ever going to actually manage. Quite a lot of people never actually stop and think about their own personal brand management. They never think about how do they show up? What is the message that they're communicating? Where are they? How do they amplify themselves? And it's a time where people can reflect and think about, okay, well, I mean, an exercise I have with a lot of people who say, could I get some advice? And you sort of go, yeah, of course. One of the first things we'll do is like, well, let's just plug you into Google. Google doesn't lie. What does the Google footprint say about you? Oh, it doesn't say anything. Okay. Or it says you kind of said a few things a few years ago, and it's because people have relied on maybe their internal PR manager to manage their personal brand. Being in the Badlands maybe, or being an in-betweener. So it's a time where you can take back control of your own personal brand and say, okay, who am I? What is the message I want to say? How do I show up, communicate? What is my purpose? Because when any form of recruiter, whether it be direct or via a recruitment agency, you know that they're going to punch your name into Google. You know that they're going to stick your name into LinkedIn. It's inconceivable that the person won't take those two minor steps. And so therefore, what does Google say about you? What does LinkedIn say about you? And it's not complicated to just invest a bit of time, because everyone's a marketer. So therefore, thinking about using the tools at your disposal are critically important, so that when people are trying to find you, they can find you. And is the message they're going to find a message that you want them to find, or is it something that somebody else wrote years ago on your behalf?
No, you're right. And I do think I've noticed through the both sides of the aisle in terms of the people I've spoken to. I want to piss off a lot of advertising folk here. I'd suggest that the marketing people I speak to are much more adept and open to networking and talking about themselves, and they're much more comfortable in kind of that, 360 marketing of themselves.
Yeah.
Over the ad guys that I've spoken to. I mean, guys as in guys and girls, but the ad crowd that I've spoken to, there's a weird.
I agree. I mean, I wouldn't pick out agencies over brands. I think it's just an individual thing. But what I do see is that I do sort of see lots of people who they sort of go at networking, or I had somebody the other day going, well, I can't big myself up, and I'm thinking, what kind of playground insanity is this? You're in between jobs and you're talking to me about not bigging yourself up. I mean, for God's sake, you're the need to be able to project and promote yourself, to amplify your skill set. This isn't networking's a bit cheesy. It's like, for God's sake, it's like, that's what, just if you're trying to get your, technically, if you're just trying to get your brand to sell, I mean, not your personal brand, your actual in work brand to sell. That's just networking. It's just enabling people to have heard of you. We've got, as an industry, if all the skills you could ever possibly want to be able to mount brilliant job searches. But sometimes people are really reticent. I don't know, for fear that other people in the industry, I mean, let's face it, maybe the people in jobs are going to laugh at them, or I don't know, stick a note on the back of their jumper like they're in a playground.
No, I do think there's a bit of ego attached to it for sure. And I'd have no problem suggesting that the agency world is a little bit more guilty of that, for sure. I guarantee, for sure. And I'm basing that just on my conversations with people from either sides of the aisle. But I think ultimately, it boils down to, I've seen the most ridiculous simplification of that notion of not wanting to put the open to work banner on their LinkedIn thing out of fear of being seen as unemployed. I'm like, but you are. So just, it's like, why would you not tell people that you need a new job? Unless you don't need one, that's fine. But
and I think open to work actually is an interesting one, because I think I probably get asked about that at least 5 times a week, going, shall I have it? I go, it's personal choice. It's completely up to you. You might want to put it on, you might not. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm sure LinkedIn will be able to tell me some statistic, but I'd go, if it's right for you, it's right for you. It might be that the first thing in your bio says you're open for work, as opposed to the thing around your head. I don't know, but it's emotive, I think, for some people. I have no idea what impact it gives to actual people who are looking, so the people with the jobs. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I think like trying to get fit or exercising, you kind of have to pull a lot of levers. It's not just one thing. You
yeah,
can't just go to the gym. You know, if you're not eating right and looking after your nutrition, then nothing will happen, or it'll take a lot longer. So I think it's just one of the many things you could and should be doing. Like you say, it's up to you if you want to do it or not. But
yeah.
nothing bad's going to come from saying you're looking for a new job, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
agree, and I think is if you're going to make something happen, I always kind of go, the only person you can ever trust in life is yourself. Therefore, if you're going to make something happen, then make it happen. You are going to make this happen. You are going to get this job, and so therefore, being visible, being helpful, being open to connect, being the person who is driving the bus forward, driving your careers forward, managing a brand. And if that's the right tactic to help achieve the aim of making something happen, then of course it's going to be the right tactic. We're like going back to the podcast, and you said, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Just do it." If it's the right lever to pull the lever. Because
and
this is
sometimes there's no way
this
of
is
knowing
your
until you
brand.
pull it, right?
Yeah,
You don't necessarily know, and there's no way of knowing beforehand. You just kind of have to have faith in having a crack, right? And I think
yeah,
if you put your heart and soul into something, that's the best. That's the only thing you really need to focus on, right? Everything
yeah,
else is just circumstantial, and what will be will kind of happen. So, no, I'm a huge believer in that. And weirdly for me, it's taken this time in the Badlands to kind of learn some of those things about myself. And I think people go through a bit of a journey, Richard. I wonder if, the people you experience from predominantly the client side marketing world,
hmm
do you see that in them? Do you see them going from kind of maybe dropping a little bit of ego and then being a bit more open to new things as they're.
yeah. I think you will see people. There's definitely a sort of a curve that people go through because people are always. I think the first couple of months, people are quite enthusiastic, optimistic. It's going to be fine. If I could change one thing, it's the amount of people that go, "Well, I had the first 2 or 3 months off as me time."
Yeah.
And then I get into search, and then they find out that the
Yeah.
search is harder than they thought. And I kind of go, if there's one change I could encourage people, anybody that's listening to this, to make, is it's like, don't do that at the start of the process.
Yeah.
Don't give yourself 2 or 3 months off as me time. You can do that at the end of the process, not at the start of the process.
When you lock
Because
in your thing that you start in 2 months' time, we then go to town on the yoga and the playing golf.
exactly that. And so people, they have some me time for 2 months, 3 months. I mean, I can't dictate, but I kind of go, God, you're never going to get that time back. It's better to just get going. I've got a mantra I'd push to everybody, which is getting a full-time job is a full-time job. You need to treat it like a full-time job. You need to be up. I sound like your mother now, but it's like up, out of bed, getting on with life.
Yeah.
If I had, if you, I don't know if you remember the film The Full Monty, there was a brilliant scene which I keep meaning to go back and find, which was a guy who left his house every day dressed to go to work, as I think he was a bank manager, and he always used to leave the house with his briefcase. And he got found on a park bench by one of the other people in the Full Monty. And he said, "What's in the briefcase?" And the only thing in the briefcase was his sandwiches, because he didn't have a job to go to, and he had to confess the fact he was between roles. But what I like about it, and what I always push everybody is, set yourself a goal that you'll leave. I work away from home every day. I don't work in the office. I don't work at home, but I work away from home every day, and it's a conscious choice because now I'm more productive when I get out of the front door. But I also know that more things are going to happen outside my front door than inside my front door,
Yeah, for
and it
sure.
means that I'm fortunate that I get to go to stack loads of industry events, but some of them are big, some of them are small. But I know that because I'm not at home, it's much easier to invite me into things, and it's easier for me to find the time to go to them. And at all of those events is where interesting things happen. I suppose my kinship with people who are in between is, my job is meeting brands, meeting senior marketing leaders who are in work, but they've hit a very specific challenge in their role, which is that they're thinking about finding a new agency, or it might be they're thinking about needing my help to mediate to stay with their agency. So they're in this sort of world of they're in the process of breaking up, which for some of them is quite a traumatic experience. And they need people to talk to get some advice from so they can move forwards and on to the next phase. So there's sort of quasi in between, as I sort of think in my head. But going back to the point of this particular bit was getting a full-time job is a full-time job, and having people stop and therefore make the best use of every day as early as possible is as important as possible, because it is going to be tough when you get out there, because there are a lot of people who are in play at the moment, and a lot of good people in play at the moment. So the small, marginal, incremental things sometimes can make the biggest difference that you're putting out there.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think now, what is it, November 2024? It's clear that the market isn't like someone may have experienced it the last time they moved jobs, let's say a few years ago. Pre-COVID, I guess, is probably the line in the sand, largely for a lot of the ills that I think the industry is facing at the moment. Not as direct correlation, but just as a time base. And I think, I think enough people now know that whatever is happening at the moment, be it they're facing redundancy, it's like just crack on straight away. Like even in the downward spiral of that role, you should be in your kind of next phase of hunting. You before we move into positivity around 2025 and some of the kind of findings and conversations you've been having, there's something that you said to me when we spoke offline at the beginning of the year that I've either misquoted a million times or I've explained badly to people. And it was the notion of, you've got your 9 to 5, essentially your job, but then your belief in the kind of 5 to 9. And as that time period and how you should be using that, or
so
maybe looking at that. And sorry, just particularly as you progress in your career, because it's not a coincidence that everyone I speak to is of a seniority, like you say, marketing director and above. There are seemingly lots and lots of those talented folks. Similarly, from an agency point of view, senior account director, creative director, BDs and above is where a lot of the, I guess, my audience and guests are coming from at the moment. The mid-layer in both marketing side and agency world, as reported by a couple of recruiters on a couple of episodes recently, is pretty swimmingly going happily along and quite, easy to fulfill at the moment. And I think that kind of idea of working 9 to 5, but then you're 5 to 9, the importance of that as you progress in your career, it was something that you said to me that it blew my mind at first, annoyed me that I hadn't done it. And then it's become a thing that I need to think about. So I want people to understand it properly, because I've explained it badly before.
My theory came from this, which was that so lots of people talk about 24/7, but what they don't talk about is what's the mathematical outcome of 24/7, and it's the 168-hour a week economy. So for 168 hours a week, people, the ultimate customer, can consume content and purchase product whenever and however they like. Okay, but we in marketing are obsessed, almost like King Canute, trying to hold back the tide with the 38-hour week. Okay. Now let's think about the 38-hour week for a moment. Okay. The only reason why marketing runs a 38-hour week is because way back when trading laws for shops were 38 hours a week. And in the UK, that was Monday to Friday with half day closing normally on a Wednesday. And then you got to be open at half day on a Saturday. So marketing mirrored trading, 38 hours of trading, 38 hours of marketing. Okay. And that means 130 hours of the week, marketing is closed, whereas 38 hours of the week, marketing is open. And this really got me thinking, because, I know, you can throw back to, well, how to say it? What about ad tech and martech? Don't they carry the slack? And they do. But it got me thinking about the principle of people that work in the industry. We get paid to go to work from 9 to 5. I get paid to do my job from 9 to 5. From 5 to 9, which is the remaining 130 hours of the week, I can choose how much or little of my time I want to invest in my future self. I can decide if I want to invest an hour a week or 20 hours a week in my future self, my future career that I haven't yet got. And what I learned about 20 years ago was that the more of my time I decided to invest from 5 to 9 in things in the industry, And that doesn't, that could be you're going to take a course, obviously like I don't know, a mini MBA or something like that. Or it could be that you're going to go on to the board of the Ideas Foundation, for example, which is an incredible organization that works with very creatively gifted 16-year-olds who struggle in economically and geographically disadvantaged areas. It's right in the heart of our industry. If you operate with the Ideas Foundation, it's just looking at brands, agencies, creativity, talent. But the more of my time I started consciously investing from 5 to 9, the greater the payout it had. But I didn't see that payout for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And if you now look at my job now, what do I need to do? I need to know everyone. I mean, it sounds a bit crazy, but I need to have connections built on trust with brands and agencies, so that when a marketing director pops up and says everything's not quite going right, I mean, I always kind of say everybody I get to see on a daily basis is, number one, senior enough to ask for help. That's a very reverential position that you get into. But, it's okay to say, I don't really know what's going on. Number two, they have to have a problem. Nobody ever comes to see me to tell me that life's great. And number three, I know that they can't really articulate what the problem is, because the chances are I haven't ever lent into this type of problem before. So they're senior enough to ask for help. They have got a problem, and they're kind of struggling to articulate what the problem is. And my 5 to 9 life might be one evening a week. It might be a breakfast a week. It might be something on a Saturday where I'm, I don't know, learning something. It dramatically affects my ability to be able to do a good job for the people that then hire me to come in and help them, whether they be brands or agencies. And I would like more people to think about their 5 to 9 investments. You're investing in your career. You're investing in yourself. No one's paying you for that other than you. You are paying yourself in time today, but it will pay out exponentially when you get into the future. And it sort of ties it. There was a phrase that a wrestling coach in high school in Midwest America is actually where I got this from originally. I wish I could find the person's name, because I keep meaning to say thank you to him. And he had this theory that good to great is not good enough. And I really liked this as a concept, because his idea was that anybody can get to great. We can all imagine what great looks like. We can feel it. We've seen the book, which is in every bookshop and every airport, From Good to Great. So we're kind of like, yeah, I get that. And his position was good to great is not good enough. What you actually need is good to elite. And I went, wow, mind blowing for me, because I was like, shit. Because at which point you go, what is elite? And you go, that's it, because you can decide what the elite version of you looks like, whereas other people will decide what the great version of you looks like, because great plays by the known rules. Elite does not. It's doing something completely unique and different and special. And that, in my opinion, is the difference between 9 to 5, which will get you to great, and 5 to 9, which will get you to elite. Fundamentally different, and you can own that space, because nobody else is going to tell you what to do.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, absolutely. So people listening will understand why it blew my mind, because there's a lot to take in, and I think some people are guilty of not doing it, and it's like you say, unless it's a company organized kind of, hey, you're going to this thing. I think that's how. No, I won't. I'll refrain from saying most people. That's how I'd kind of tackled that. Oh, can you go to this thing? It's like, yeah, sure. More often than not, there'd be, not the best Tuesday night you'd ever had, but you never knew, like you say, there'd be someone there, or there'd be an interesting connection, and it's about slightly flipping that and just going, well, longevity is spoken about from a health point of view all the time these days, but no one's talking about career longevity, and I think it's a real thing at the moment. I think what you're describing there is the means to ensure you have a little bit more longevity in your career than just relying on being good at the thing you do 9 to 5.
Correct, because then you get put into different spaces that might not be the norm. And I kind of get, the great thing about our industry is, we've got so many brilliant organizations. As marketers, people naturally think about the Chartered Institute of Marketing or the Marketing Society, which are both great, by the way. But I'd be pushing people to go, why aren't you engaging with Creative Equals, or with Who's Your Mama, or the Ideas Foundation, or Media for All, or advertising, or No Turning Back 2020 or She Says or Women in Marketing. These are phenomenal organizations that work at the apex of our industry. And guess what? Inside them, they're full of lots of brands and lots of agencies, amazing, remarkable people who've all got the same challenges that the rest of us have got. Within all of those organizations, you may well find, just that one spark of the person that goes, oh, by the way, I've just been chatting to brand X and they need a new marketing director. I mean, that's, I spend a lot of my time just noodling around helping all these different organizations in lots of different capacities, as do the team, because, you find fabulously interesting bits, but you have to do that in your 5 to 9 time because they're all run by volunteers and different things, but a bit like the podcast today. It's like, you have made this happen. You're driving us all forwards to something which is bigger and more interesting and exciting.
No, I love it. Thank you. So look, I think as we started this, I promised the listeners that you'd give some semblance of hope and positivity and excitement around 2025. So I think what could be good just to kind of end on a little bit of what are you seeing, what are you hearing, what are you experiencing, and what are your views on 25? And I guess understanding that people listening will be thinking, how is this going to affect me, and is this going to open up new opportunities for me? Really is.
So the number one stat everybody needs to know is there is more money, more physical liquidity, financial liquidity in marketing services now than there's ever been in history. We will hit £40 billion worth of ad spend, marketing spend before the end of 2024. That comes from WARC and the Advertising Association. The IPA bellwether will get us there or thereabouts, which means that in 2025 we're going to be cutting through to probably about 41 billion by the end of 2025. So more money in the system than there's ever been before. And to give you a sort of reference point, Germany, next largest European market, is on 20 billion. So we are twice the size of Germany. Now, it would be remiss of me to say that at least 3.5 of every £5 is being spent in digital in some capacity, but that shouldn't be scary. It's just more an emphasis that the industry is moving forward. So more money than there's ever been in history ever. When I look at jobs, so this is obviously probably the stat that people need most, is I run a tracker every week. And the question I'm trying to get to the bottom of, which is in marketing, how many jobs have been fulfilled in the last week? And so for the last 20 weeks, it's averaged 50 jobs. That's from head of marketing and above. Okay, so head of marketing being a sort of a 85, 90 grand job and above. So 50 jobs are being filled every week. Of those jobs, roughly 30 every week internal promotions, and that leaves 20 as external hires. So every week. So that means that every month, if you're going to ladder it up, that's about somewhere between 70 to 80 external hires being made of head of marketing and above. Break that down to marketing directors, half that. We're going to do maths. So that's roughly about anywhere between 30 and 40 marketing directors and above get hired on a monthly basis externally. Okay. So I offer that up as evidence when everybody goes, oh gosh, there are no jobs out there. And I go, well, as far as I'm concerned, there are some jobs out there. Other people are getting those jobs. So how are we going to make sure that maybe the people listening to this are getting in front of the right people? Some of those are clearly coming through recruiters. Other of them are just coming through people making it happen, getting out, using their 5 to 9 time, working away from home, getting involved in industry events, being visible, being helpful out in the market. So I believe when I look at next year, the budgets aren't going anywhere, which means that grown up, sensible, experienced people are going to be required to drive those ships to move them forward. I think there's going to be a lot more change, flux, which is going to be happening in the brand agency world. Why is that? Because as part of the survey I mentioned earlier, that Ingenuity Plus conducted, we asked 502 marketing directors their intentions of whether you're going to pitch some or all of your marketing in the next 12 months. 69% of them said, yes, definitely, they will be pitching some or all of their marketing. 28% of them said, yes, potentially, they'll be pitching some or all of their marketing. So what does that mean? That means there's going to be change, like a bit of a reset, I think, coming into the market. When people are talking about pitching, they don't necessarily mean their TV, by the way. That could be something to do with their programmatic, or it could be something to do with their PR, or it could be something to do with their below the line, where budgets are traditionally lower than the full kahuna, which is the big TV lead agency spend. I think I'm looking at going more money. There are clearly jobs out there. If I look at the list of in-betweeners who I've been supporting, the high point was in February and we were speaking and there was 73. I'm now down to 41. So there's less people that either I'm getting worse at my job or there's just less people reaching out and saying they actually need help. And certainly I know from, roles that, I pass a lot of CVs around amongst friends. I know that I've got at least a dozen people roles this year, but that's speeding up as the months go on, as more people are asking about good talent which is out there. And my simple metric, my simple payment method, which I think as everybody knows, is that I don't take any money because I'm not a recruiter and I'm belittling what the brilliant recruiters do. I will take one glass of wine as payment because I haven't obviously done any due diligence on these people because I'm not a professional recruiter. And it's important to when you're out there to be thinking about how do you make it easy for people to really get to grips with, how is your strategic leadership? How is your creative excellence? How is your digital mastery? How is your operational discipline? And I think that next year is going to be better, more optimistic, more positive when it comes into roles. I think the jitters of 2024 have not been helped by the general election, which has obviously happened a few months ago. We've just had the new budget. Business now has all the certainty it requires, whether that be, positive or negative, but business now knows what's happening.
Yeah,
And this is
it has the
allegedly,
facts to work with. Yeah.
yeah, this is allegedly the harshest budget that we're going to get in this 4-year cycle of the government. So everybody can build. If we've had sort of the base point, all brands can now build out as they look forwards and move forward. So I would not be despondent. I'd be backing yourself. I'd be thinking hard about who you are as a brand. What is the message that you're communicating digitally? Because it's where a lot of people are going to look at you. And then physically, how many times do you actually engage with the industry on a weekly basis? How many times can you get out, or can I help you get out there into industry events? Because I can guarantee you that the people running most of the organizations that cut across the industry are desperately looking for top talent to come and populate their panels, to be involved in discussion, to engage with some of their stakeholders, to help drive some of their programs. And great things always come from that, always happen from that. And they either that or I'm a sample size of one, but I find that the more people are engaging, the more things are coming back the other way.
No, for sure. I mean, as simple as, put good things out into the universe and good
Correct.
things will happen tends to be
100%.
a good way of just looking at everything, right? So, well, I think that's, I'm similarly seeing notions of that from the agency world. A little bit of lead up to kind of looking at Q1, they must be starting to think about teams and, things that they're planning with their own brands and accounts. And there's a little bit of movement out there, I've noticed in the ad land, a few little conversations bubbling up around senior positions at various places. I do see the independents being a little bit more maneuverable and ability to adjust a little bit, obviously, against some of the larger global networks and things. And I think that might be where some of the joy might be had for the agency world from a recruitment point of view, as they, can pivot and zigzag a little bit more to clients' requests easier than some of the larger places. So yeah, I've noticed it this last couple of weeks, certainly. I think people are gearing up. So I think it's great for you to give your view of it based on your insights. And clearly you're in the heat of battle and the thick of it, constantly working with the people you work with. So I think that'll be super positive for people listening.
Thank you.
Which is, a small service that it's a little thing that we can do from Richard, right?
I think,
just collectively we owe you a glass of wine, I think.
So I mean, I don't know, my mantra, which will end up on my tombstone, I know, which is just be nice, do great work. I've always kind of felt that that's just kind of the answer to everything in our industry, which is just, don't be an arsehole. Just be nice, give to the people around you, really just be a radiator who's just effervescently giving to everyone around you, and then do great work. It's, it doesn't matter if you're in between roles. And I know that it is tough, it is hard, it's disheartening, but the doing great work or being elite rather than being great is something that will stand you in tremendous stead when you're then in front of the people who are asking, well, what can you do for me? Be nice, do great work, I suppose, where I might conclude.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end it. I can't thank you enough for your time. You're the busiest man in advertising and marketing, the human LinkedIn, as I now affectionately refer to
very,
you as. I
very kind.
deeply
Thank
have
you.
referred to you as that in the past. Um, there's not many people who I've met who go, "Oh, I'm talking to Richard next week." Oh yeah, tell him I said hi. I haven't seen him. I saw him at this thing. Everyone, you must go
Thank you.
through some hand sanitizer, Richard. That hand you must shake. I would be. Look, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been. I can't thank you enough for your help, just on a personal level, in some of the advice that you gave me early on, and then when we've met at a few other things. Madfest in summer was fantastic. I really enjoyed going to that. It was a great event. Looking forward to next year's already. And some of the people you've introduced me to, who will be excited to listen to this podcast for sure. I know they all speak highly of you as well. So I can't
Thank
thank you
you.
enough, Richard. Appreciate your time. Just down the line, 2 seconds, mate. Whilst this thing does its thing and ends its recording of us both. But clearly, when I put this out, there'll be linked to Richard Robinson. I'd be
Yep.
surprised if you get a new linked up LinkedIn thing because you know everyone, but you never know. So we will. Everybody who doesn't know Richard, know Richard. It's good to know Richard.
Thank you.
No worries, mate. Stay on the line. Thank you.